Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
Vince Coglianese.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Dan Schneider from the Media Research Center's Free Speech America joins us. We'll talk about the United States Supreme Court today determining that law banning TikTok, it can go into effect. A unanimous decision. Dan Schneider breaks it all down for us ahead this hour. Vice Admiral John Noel is with us today, 4 o'clock. He's the president and CEO of the U.S. Navy Memorial, and that's where I'm doing the broadcast today. I'm doing this broadcast live at the Navy Memorial in downtown Washington, D.C., right near all of the security fencing ahead of that inauguration Monday. More on that in a moment. Chris Dolan will be with us. He's the president of the Washington Times. He'll also talk about the inauguration. In fact, thank goodness, he's an inauguration historian. What better day to bring him in than on the day when President Trump seems to be repeating some inauguration history. And then Mark Krikorian talks about the border with us, and in particular, Kristi Noem's confirmation hearing today in the United States Senate to become the Secretary of Homeland Security. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I want to extend my gratitude first and foremost to the fine men and women of the Navy Memorial. Again, we're downtown in Washington, D.C. We're here just days after President Jimmy Carter's was brought here. His body was brought here to honor him and his service to the country. Pretty cool to be down here. And already it's becoming a little bit tricky as I parked my car and I'm navigating through the streets. They've got all of the human barriers up. Boy, when Washington wants to put a wall up, they can do it in no time if it involves protecting the people of this city, namely the leaders of this city. And they got the wall up, and they're already kind of assembling all the final pieces. But what's it going to be for? What? I don't even know what the perimeter is going to look like Monday. There's a lot of chaos right now around the what will it look like question, because President Trump today just announced via Truth Social in these last few hours that the inauguration will be moved indoors into the Capitol Rotunda on Monday because the temperatures are expected to be very, very low. We've been telling you now for at least the last week that the Inauguration Day temperatures were expected to be low, rivaling Ronald Reagan's second inaugural in 1985, which, by the way, was actually much colder. And President Trump's inauguration is now set to be moved indoors because temperatures in Washington are not expected to officially get above 20 degrees, although when you factor in wind chill, they say now it's pushing into the single digits. When that wind is smacking everybody in the face as they're standing outside, single-digit temperatures will be the feeling. And President Trump had this statement, and he accompanied it with a helpful temperature map of Washington, D.C. today when he posted it to Truth Social. Here's what he said. January 20th cannot come fast enough. Everybody, even those that initially opposed a victory by President Donald J. Trump and the Trump administration, just want it to happen. It is my obligation to protect the people of our country, but before we even begin, we have to think of the inauguration itself. The weather forecast for Washington, D.C., with the wind chill factor, could take temperatures into severe record lows. There is an Arctic blast sweeping the country. I don't want to see people hurt or injured in any way. It is dangerous conditions for the tens of thousands of law enforcement, first responders, police, canines, and even horses, and hundreds of thousands of supporters that will be outside for many hours on the 20th. In any event, if you do decide to come, the president said, dress warmly. Therefore, I have ordered the inauguration address, in addition to prayer speeches, to be delivered in the United States Capitol Rotunda, as was used by Ronald Reagan in 1985, also because of very cold weather. The various dignitaries and guests will be brought into the Capitol. This will be a very beautiful experience for all, and especially for the large TV audience, says President Trump. And then he says this, we will open Capital One Arena on Monday for live viewing of this historic event and to host the presidential parade. I will join the crowd at Capital One after my swearing in. All other events will remain the same, including the victory rally at Capital One Arena on Sunday at 3 p.m. Remember, that's a separate event at Capital One. The doors there open at 1 p.m. Please arrive early. And all 3 inaugural balls on Monday evening, he says, will also continue as planned. Everyone will be safe, everyone will be happy, and we will together make America great again. All caps, exclamation point. All right, so the temperature's cold. That's the rationale here. Now, if you're like me, one of your first reactions today was, is it just the weather? Is that the only consideration? Is there anything else going on here that they may not want to indicate they've got knowledge of? Meaning, are there security risks? Look, President Trump has been now literally shot, attempted assassinations on the campaign trail, and certainly he's got his fair share of enemies who would like to take him out. And an inauguration, it's a big event. A lot of people trying to secure it. We've got 25,000 law enforcement of all different agencies who were scheduled to be a part of this on Monday. Clearly, as I mentioned already, the walls going up around all of the controlled areas in D.C. to try and make this as safe as possible. And, I'm not even beginning to question the dedication of so many law enforcement officers who would work to secure this thing. But that definitely did cross my mind when you hear that, well, they're moving it indoors, and then he's having an event at an indoor arena, which is also, by the way, what they tell us is typically a much safer place to secure an indoor arena, the Capital One Arena. Now, having said all of that, it is useful to go back in time to 1985 to take a closer look at what happened with President Reagan, because President Reagan also endured very low temperatures for his inauguration back then. And in fact, he also held an event at an indoor arena after the ceremony inside of the rotunda. Take a listen. This is coverage back in 1985, contemporaneous coverage of Ronald Reagan's inauguration and the change in plans.
Extreme cold. The nation's capital is aglow tonight with the fever of presidential inauguration. The start of 4 more years for President Ronald Reagan.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear that
Actually, the president was sworn in as the Constitution requires in a private White House ceremony at high noon earlier this day. Even though the cold weather is forcing cancellation of the inaugural parade, the reenactment of the swearing-in ceremony tomorrow is still the centerpiece of a weekend of events with a price tag of some $12 million in private funds. An event rehearsed last week with military men playing the parts of the principals involved.
All right, so you heard some of the dates there. What's interesting about the 1985 inauguration is President Reagan was sworn in the White House on the 20th, as the Constitution requires, noon on the 20th. But the event that they did at the Rotunda took place on the 21st. This is President Trump is going to stick to the 20th here with this event that they will be doing inside of the Capitol Rotunda so that he can be sworn in officially there. And then he says the parade goes to the Capital One Arena. Now, as it relates to President Reagan, I go back in time to, January 21st, 1985. The L.A. Times has a piece up about what Reagan did. They said, headline, Reagan sworn in, inaugural parade canceled by cold, health threat to thousands feared, public ceremony today to be indoors. To be indoors. And they start here. Ronald Wilson Reagan took the presidential oath of office for a second term Sunday in a low-key White House ceremony, and then hours later took the historically rare step of canceling today's inaugural parade and shifting the public inauguration indoors because of new fallen snow, bitter winds, and record cold temperatures. Reagan saying in a statement, quote, safety must come first. The health and safety of those attending and working at these outdoor events must come before any celebrations. As a result, the LA Times wrote back in 1985, Reagan will deliver his second inaugural address in the rotunda of the Capitol instead of from the traditional site on its front steps. And inaugural spokesman James Lake said that officials were hurriedly trying to organize an indoor event this afternoon at the Washington Capitol Center, a convention arena, so that the thousands of would-be parade participants could still gather with the president. They say when Reagan took the oath Sunday, the outside temperature stood at only 9 degrees, with a wind chill factor equal to 22 below zero, apparently making it the coldest day ever for a presidential swearing-in. Now, the numbers we're talking about are not close to that. That's very low, 22 degrees below zero. But we are talking about single-digit wind chill on Monday. You also wonder to what extent President Trump is enamored with the idea that a lot of this is sort of hearkening back to those years that I'm sure he remembers very fondly, very well. The heyday, 1980s. President Trump at the time, Donald Trump, maybe as famous as he's ever been, headed towards even more fame. Actually, no, he's way more famous now. But certainly he was a internationally recognized businessman figure in the 1980s, going into the 90s. And he probably remembers very fondly Ronald Reagan's presidency now and looks back at that. And, boy, does he not see the parallels? Getting hostages out ahead of even taking the oath of office. And additionally now making the same move that it looks like Reagan did, which is to protect the people who would attend. Now, there are lots of people here in Washington, D.C. right now. They've already arrived. Some are still yet to arrive. Their expectation was that they were going to an inauguration, that they were going to see President Trump in person. And let's be honest, you travel a great distance. You're a big fan. You voted for the guy. You worked hard for him. And it's not happening. Well, yeah, that'll be the subject of some disappointment. NBC4 today was interviewing some people in downtown Washington. They're here for the inauguration, and they were surprised to hear the news.
So the inauguration is going to be moved inside the rotunda, and there's going to be a viewing party at Capital One Arena for folks, but nobody's going to be outside now. What's your reaction to that?
So we're not going to get to see it in person then. Is that correct?
That's right.
Well, I don't like it. I mean, we came all the way from Washington, from Oklahoma, and, now we're not going to get to see it. We might as well stay home and watch it on TV.
It sucks. Let me rephrase that. It's not good. Yeah, it's actually something that we've been looking forward to for historical purposes, and being a part of it, that's once in a lifetime.
Absolutely.
We made all the plans, all the arrangements to come up and be a part of this event. And all of a sudden, to hear that it's being moved indoors,
we're prepared for the weather. It's not a problem.
It's kind of like a bummer.
It is, yeah.
Cold ain't gonna hurt nobody. And we have farms, and we don't get to not feed the cows because it's cold.
We've got farms. We don't get to not feed the cows because it's cold. I don't blame them in the slightest. And so, yeah, I understand that. It's a little bit of disappointment today as you find out that the president has moved things indoors, but he's saying it's necessary given the cold. Still a lot of questions to be answered, including who qualifies to get into the Capital One Arena on Inauguration Day. That's an arena that seats 20,000 people. We're still awaiting some of the logistical answers to that. How does the parade move to the Capital One Arena? Do they march the parade just through some of the big doors across where the ice would normally be? We will see. I'm not sure. And can you get the white garbage truck into the Capital One Arena? Again, they get the Zambonis in there. Maybe the garbage truck could do the same thing. So a lot of questions yet to be answered on this subject. Mike is calling in from Manassas right now on line one. Mike, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hello, Vince. Hey, just by chance, I was in the Patriots in Northern Virginia marching group that was supposed to be in the original Reagan inauguration parade, and we were kind of bummed out at first. They gave us a call, said, hey, you guys, it looks like it's going to be real cold. But the second call we got was saying it's going to be inside. You're going to be able to still see Reagan, but it's going to be at the Capitol Center. So we were kind of bummed out, but we weren't bummed out, if you know what I mean.
So you went to, this was the old Capitol Center arena, Landover, Maryland, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And did you what did that look? You were in the parade, so did you parade through the building? What happened?
No, I wish. No, we were supposed to be in the parade for the inauguration down Pennsylvania Avenue, but it was called the Patriots of Northern Virginia. It was led by Sam and Nanette Evans out of Arlington, we got a call saying, hey, they've postponed or they've put off the actual parade, and that we're going to have some kind of ceremony at the Capitol Center. So, to my recollection, there was, I think, the Army Fife and Drum Corps that actually played, and they did the national anthem, I think the Black Watch and that kind of thing. But we weren't able to do the actual parade, but we did get into the Capitol Center, and we saw Reagan. So, and we stayed warm. So I don't think we're completely bummed out.
Yeah. All right, very cool. Well, Mike, thank you for that. Yeah, I was. It's interesting to see all the parallels here, and it looks like, Mike, that President Trump is really pulling from the Reagan playbook here. He's bringing this thing indoors, as Reagan did, and then he's separately going to now the Capital One Arena, which is the home to the very same professional teams that the Capitol Center used to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of weird how it all circles back around.
It is weird. Very weird. Mike, thank you very much for that perspective. All right, hold on. More ahead. 3:21 now.
WMAL, making sense of the economy because it's your money and your retirement. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Got a message on X. Somebody calls me Mr. Doom and Gloom. And literally the message is, hey, Mr. Doom and Gloom. Desiders. Thank you, Desiders, for the note. It's the frickin' dead of winter. It's been nasty cold. It's supposed to be nasty cold come Monday. I care more about the health and care of the incoming president than anything else. Reasonable concerns. Reasonable. But you're also allowed to be disappointed that you don't get to see him, you know? As 250,000 patriots want to go to an inauguration and see President Trump and what they fought for. They have every right to desire that. It's a tough break, you know, to experience this. And my guess is, in the end, we're talking about the security concerns for the guy. It's probably a mixture of both in the end. It makes a lot of sense for the weather reasons, but it also probably gives a bunch of the security guys a chance to breathe a sigh of relief that this will be a more contained environment to protect a guy who definitely needs to be protected. So there's that. The numbers here in terms of who can attend, that also is in flux. You know, think about that whole stand of people that sit behind the president. You're talking hundreds of members of Congress. You've got, including 435 House members, 100 senators, the United States Supreme Court, President Trump's family, visiting dignitaries. Where are we going to put Jeff Bezos now? We got to find an Amazon Prime box to stuff him into. There's all sorts of logistical issues here. Axios reports that back when Ronald Reagan, again, did this in 1985 in the Capitol Rotunda, only 96 people fit in the room. Get ready for Inauguration Survivor. They're going to be voting people out really quick this weekend. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez still not coming. It's pretty funny. They should invite her now, just to troll her. Hey, coming up, Dan Schneider joins us from the Media Research Center's Free Speech America as the Supreme Court today all agrees, 9-0, that law banning TikTok, it's good to go. Dan will talk to us about that next.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 3:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Coming to you live from the Navy Memorial today, downtown Washington, D.C. Figured I'd take a closer look at some of the security perimeter ahead of the inauguration. I guess it's not quite as important anymore now that the whole thing's been moved indoors. We'll find out, though. Coming up on the program, Admiral John Knoll will be with us, the president of the Navy Memorial. We'll chat with him about the state in particular of our sailors and their ships and what the future looks like. Chris Dolan will be with us at 4:30 from the Washington Times, the president there. He'll talk to us about inauguration history and what to expect Monday. And then Mark Krikorian at 5 o'clock. We talk immigration as we always do with him. In particular, Kristi Noem's confirmation hearing today in the United States Senate to become the next Secretary of Homeland Security. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The United States Supreme Court today, in a 9-0 decision, ruled that the Chinese Communist Party's TikTok application must be shut down starting Sunday in the United States of America, unless, by some miracle, a buyer comes through and forces the Chi-Coms to divest from it. It doesn't look like that's going to happen over the weekend. So it looks like TikTok is headed for that ban. Although, I will say, President Biden today signaled that he is not going to enforce the law. Just as his final act as president, he's going to, once again, ignore the law. NBC News, Biden administration says it will leave TikTok ban enforcement for Trump. Interesting, because the 19th is the day that ban's supposed to take place, not the 20th. President Joe Biden's administration said it will be up to President-elect Donald Trump to implement the ban on TikTok, which is set to take effect in 2 days. Quote, given the sheer fact of timing, this administration recognizes that actions to implement the law simply must fall to the next administration, which takes office on Monday, said outgoing White House Press Secretary Karinj in a statement. All right, for more on this topic and what it all means for the country, Dan Schneider joins us now. He's the vice president of the Media Research Center's Free Speech America. Dan, good to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, this decision was really, really important for the point that you made. Like, we shouldn't allow our mortal enemies to be able to put their Trojan horses inside of our borders to destroy us. Mm-hmm. But also, the D.C. Circuit Court, the Intermediate Appellate Court, that previously ruled on this, came up with this tortured, twisted, unnecessary logic, and it was clear that what they were trying to do was establish a new legal framework to say that it's okay for government to censor speech. But this Supreme Court, and thank God for for Justice Thomas, Gorsuch, and Alito, who lead the free speech fights, thank God for them, because they completely smacked down the D.C. Circuit opinion and in this ruling limited it very narrowly on national security grounds for our national security interests, not this ridiculous claim that it's okay for government to censor speech.
Yeah, by the way, if you're concerned about government censoring speech, you probably shouldn't be too happy with TikTok, given that the Chi-Coms run the whole platform and its algorithm.
Right. It is a Chinese spy app. It was designed specifically to hoover up all kinds of data on Americans, and not for the purpose of selling us trinkets and credit card applications, but so that the Chinese could create the most superior AI system in the world for military purposes. So they've already got tons and tons of data on us.
Yes.
We can't just let them have access to our data that they will use against us in, frankly, combat and to destroy our system of government and our economy.
One of the amusing effects of all of this, the expected ban of TikTok that I've seen, is that there are people who are now recommending other Chinese apps that you can flee to if you're concerned about the TikTok ban. So Americans are signing up for these random Chinese apps, and they're posting. And now the Chinese government is trying to stop their own people from seeing the things that Americans are saying. So I just love how all of this is transpiring.
Yeah, and it's one of these things is called the Little Red Book, and all these Americans, these teenagers who are getting it, I guess they don't know that the original term Little Red Book referred to Mao, responsible for millions and millions of people dying, and who himself was crazy with syphilis. His Little Red Book was the doctrine by which he controlled everybody's lives.
Wow, I didn't know that. Chairman Mao went crazy with syphilis?
Oh, yeah. He had there was a time during the Cultural Revolution where the concept of marriage and monogamy was considered bourgeois. So you had all these Chinese communist officials running around, getting syphilis and things. Yeah.
I didn't realize the role that syphilis played in the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Fascinating. Hey, Dan, this obviously TikTok. We're seeing this ban is now effective, although I just mentioned that President Biden is refusing, as is tradition, he's refusing to enforce laws he doesn't like. He's just going to skip past that. Even though, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Joe Biden is the president on both Sunday and Monday morning.
He is until noon. And then kind of disconnected from that is that he's just announced that he can amend the U.S. Constitution all on his own. Right, he can ignore whatever laws he wants, and then he can create constitutional provisions at will. Like, I didn't realize we had an emperor. How wonderful he's going to be gone soon.
Today, Joe Biden literally declared, as if he's Michael Scott yelling, "I declare bankruptcy" in the middle of the office. He straight up just posted a statement saying that he considers the Equal Rights Amendment to be effective. The so-called Equal Rights Amendment, which has been around, an effort to get it through for decades. All of the relevant deadlines are long dead, and it is not ratified. Joe Biden says it is, which, of course, I don't think that means anything, does it, Dan?
Well, look, our Constitution provides these provisions for how you amend it. But I guess our Constitution is a threat to democracy, just like free speech is a threat to democracy, just like our elections is a threat to democracy. But no, Joe Biden cannot simply unilaterally declare that a constitutional amendment has been passed and is now enforceable.
Also, let's just pretend for a moment that he could and okay, now the Equal Rights Amendment's effective. Doesn't that mean that women will be subject to the draft going forward?
What is a woman?
Yeah, what is a woman anyway? It's so hard to tell these days. That's funny. Anyway, so that's Joe Biden's lawlessness to close all of this out. The truth is, Dan, that while there are all sorts of excellent reasons for TikTok not to exist in the United States, President Trump has signaled that he is, many times of late, that he's kind of comfortable with it staying and would like to work towards figuring out a way for that to happen. What do you make of President Trump's relationship with all of this and his views on TikTok?
Look, well, I don't know exactly. I don't think anybody knows exactly what his views are. What we do know is that he favors the communication system of this app. He's able to communicate effectively to young people. That's fine. The communication, hey, First Amendment, we like First Amendment free speech rights. What we don't like is the Chinese Communist Party hoovering up all the data. And then, of course, we also don't like how they manipulate the content to sabotage us. But the much bigger concern that does not relate to free speech rights is their data acquisition to harm us. And that's where the Supreme Court nailed this thing. That's slap down the D.C. Circuit.
And that's what President Trump's administration said in his first term. They consider TikTok to be a national security threat. That's why they banned it from government funds.
Yeah, it is a threat, and it's an offensive weapon. And our Congress, with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, leading the way, created legislation, passed it that says the app, TikTok can stay in America. It just can't be owned and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, no, that's right. President Trump and Xi Jinping, the head of China, did discuss TikTok. I think this morning, President Trump announcing that he just had a phone call with Xi Jinping ahead of the inauguration. They discussed trade, they discussed fentanyl, and they discussed TikTok. So this conversation continues. So it's anybody's guess what take place in the weeks ahead with that app. But for now, the United States Supreme Court 9-0 decision. You don't get many of those saying that this law is good and can go into effect. Hey, Dan Schneider. Let me ask you more broadly about the rest of the big tech companies that are out there. What do you think of the guys like Mark Zuckerberg coming forward and saying, we're not going to censor anymore, and in fact, we're going to get rid of the DEI department, we're going to get rid of tampons in the men's room at Facebook, we're going all in on trying to appear normal to normal Americans again. What do you think is going on here?
So many of these big tech platforms, Facebook among them, for years have been using their resources not to make money. In fact, they were sacrificing revenues to try to cajole people into a radical woke agenda. Yeah. And I think what the election of Donald Trump has given these guys some breathing room. Maybe they didn't want the woke stuff so much. Maybe they actually wanted to make more money, because it's certainly in Facebook's interest to have more customers, not less, to have the European Union and the Chinese censor and penalize them less. So, frankly, it's in Meta's and Zuckerberg's interest to allow free speech to take place, not to impose ridiculous controls on themselves. This is, lots of people are skeptical about Zuckerberg, but we see his actions are consistent with his words, and we see his motivation is clearly consistent with his words.
Yeah, it'll be. I'm going to watch him very closely because I have all sorts of good reasons not to trust him. But one thing he said recently, he was talking to Joe Rogan on his podcast and saying he was revealing that he had Biden administration officials screaming at his employees to censor the American people. I kind of feel like if Mark Zuckerberg wants to continue down this road of redemption, or at least that's his plan, don't you think he should release the Facebook files, like every last thing they have on the way the Biden administration tried to hector them into censoring Americans?
Yes. Look, I am praising Mark Zuckerberg for what he's done, but I'm not letting him off the hook.
Right.
I really do think he's trying to promote free speech now. But how about all the harm he has caused, all the jobs he caused, the heartache? he needs to make restitution for all the harm he caused. But let me just point out, Facebook has done an about-face. ABC News has had to pay out a huge amount of money to Donald Trump. Just today, the jury returned a verdict against CNN for lying about an American hero. Our great Nick Fondacaro is down there in Florida. He's the one who broke this story, has been covering it for a long time. TikTok is now been told, fix yourself or you're out, on the 19th. It is a new day out there, and NPR and PBS are next in line. We have got to defund, zero out, crush taxpayer subsidies to that propaganda media outlet.
Yes. No, we should not be subsidizing Democratic political campaigns. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. And yet that's what we've been doing in the form of all that money we send to NPR and PBS. I love how they always pretend that they don't take that much government money. And then when you're like, all right, fine, we'll take it away, they say it's essential. It's the best.
We take so very little of it, but you can't take it away because we'll die without it.
Yes, that's right. That sounds emotionally stable. That's wonderful. Hey, Dan Schneider, Media Research Center, Free Speech America, just such a great organization, great resource. Thank you very much for all that you do, Dan.
Thanks, Vince.
Always great to talk to you. There's Dan Schneider, and we are coming to you live from the Navy Memorial today in downtown Washington, D.C. A lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. First, it's 3:49.
WMAL, making sense of the markets, because generational wealth doesn't build itself. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
All right, let's see here. I've got Sam calling in Alexandria. Hello, Sam, line 3. Good to have you on the program today, sir.
Hey, thank you so much, Vince, for taking my call. Interesting conversation on PBS and NPR. And after that, I want to pivot real quick to something else, but I think what the administration should really look at doing is, instead of scrapping them, is basically do a hostile takeover and not make it hostile. It's just, put into place, correspondents, journalists who are true as a board of directors, and they run them and they start, making them what they should be as opposed to what they currently are, and not scrapping them.
Yeah, something, now that you mention it, maybe he should just maybe President Trump should put Elon Musk in charge of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
There's so many things. There's so many things that we want Elon Musk to do anymore.
Yeah, have Musk. Just have Musk right on top of PBS and NPR, and that'll go great. That'll be fun. And even if it ends in complete chaos, it'll be satisfying, at least to me.
Well, it certainly will be better than what it is. The other point that I'd like to make, and it's funny you brought up Musk, because I thought if anybody could do it, certainly he could, is how Biden is funneling all this money to California now, and we're losing our minds over it. I'm like, no, this is an opportunity. Neither Gavin nor Bass or Bass or whatever her name is will see one dime of that. It will be a federal administrator appointed by Trump who will go in there, and he controls the purse strings, he controls the projects, and he administers it just like that, and picks his deputies and does the functioning, the prioritization of the different projects, and then guess who gets the credit for it? And it will be done appropriately and correctly.
Well, the relief funding for Los Angeles, you heard from President Trump yesterday right here on this station, talking to Dan Bongino. He said that he wants to give relief funding to L.A., but he wants to make it a part of this big reconciliation package in the House in order to get his agenda passed. And here's the magic to that arrangement, according to the president. He said this is how he gets Democrats to support him. If L.A. aid is built into that reconciliation package, that leads to Democrat votes for it in order to rescue Democrat constituents who were sold out by their awful Democrat leaders in California. It's a plan, and I think it's actually a pretty good one. And there's some elements, too. If President Trump wants to extend these tax cuts, which he does, and he's looking for other ways to convince Democrats to vote for a massive Trump agenda, what if he were to uncap that SALT deduction, which they put in place in order to basically stop these lefty states from taking advantage of the tax code in order to spend like crazy? If he puts that on the table as a chip, and says, okay, I'll give you these two things, aid for L.A. and the SALT tax deduction going away, but in return, I want everything. I don't know. That might be kind of appetizing to Chuck Schumer and company. We'll see. But clearly, we're entering a different world very quickly, Sam. Fewer than 72 hours remain until President Trump returns to the White House. And when that happens, all bets are off. All bets are off. Coming up, Vice Admiral John Noel, the president and CEO of the U.S. Navy Memorial. That's where we're doing the broadcast today. We'll talk to the Admiral moments from now.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.